respond on one of the comments where I mentioned that most especially for civil society organization, that information is reported, but it's not disseminated. So there may be a way for people to understand the contribution of civil society organizations. To some extent, I would say this is right. But then, why is this happening? For example, I've been asking myself the same question. Right now, we are in the process of EDPRS2 formulation. And my sector, we've been trying to map out all the civil society organizations to bring them on board, that we plan together. Because we believe that if we don't plan together, we're not going to implement together and we're not going to report together. But so far, my analysis, because I'm in the sectoral approach, secretariat, and when we look in the planning process, the participation of those whom we invited is still very low, the planning process. So, this will again come up again when we start implementing. Because if we're not planning together, and we come with a document or strategies or government policies, and civil society organizations are not represented, then when it comes to implementation and reporting, it will be also a difficult issue. So, and I wanted also to comment on the entry points of reporting and implementation. When you look at the government, the system, how we report, normally in a year, we report annually through the joint sector review, the backward and the forward. But then when you look at also, that is when we are supposed to be reporting together as government, government partners, civil society organizations, and private sector. Again, this is where I think this is the key entry point for all of us to report together on what we've been implementing. So I think these are two critical issues we have to look into if we are going to see the contribution of civil society organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Enoch Nziza from Ashikodo. I just have a concern with what Major pointed out on the effect of conditionality on development effectiveness. To my knowledge is, or my view is that conditionality would be a necessary evil. I think we cannot do without conditionalities. But I'm asking myself if there is a space between the government and the donors, or maybe the civil society and donors, on what conditionalities should be applied on the donations they are giving. Or maybe I also have this may take me to ask whether the conditionalities are clearly defined, because we'll be having conditionalities related to political issues or development issues. But it might be, you might find that the political side is overtaking us, overweighing the development side. And why could this be the priority? So I'm wondering if we didn't negotiate the conditionalities, or they are just imposed on the beneficiary country. And if it is the case, what could be the implication of the Busan outcome? Thank you.
I'm Joseph Rurangwa from USID. I have two points to make. One is simple. I've had presenters say Rwanda is very effective in the use of aid and was awarded an A. It has been one of the best countries in Africa in aid effectiveness. And unfortunately, with the room full of Rwandans, I didn't hear an applause. So I would recommend that we give a round of applause to everybody who is involved, including ourselves. Secondly, as a representative of USAID in the meeting, I heard that the US government is the lowest, the least in honoring its commitments to Rwanda, and I wanted this to be a bit clarified. Is it in terms of honoring the Accra, Paris, and all these international commitments, or is it in disbursing the amount of money that has been agreed in the agreement we have with Rwanda, that the US government has with Rwanda? I just wanted it to be clear for everybody. Thank you.
My question is about the roles of the civil society organizations to increase Agaciro Development Fund in our country. As an expert, what can you say about this Agaciro Development Fund? Thank you.
I can use this one. Okay, thank you so much. I'm Peter Karasira from Transparency International Rwanda, and you know our concern normally is about corruption and misuse and embezzlement. All along I have been listening to the presentations. It seems I have not had something to do with corruption in the aid effectiveness. Is it so clean that there is no corruption in aid, there is no embezzlement, there is no misuse? And yet in some other countries you hear of the suspension of global fund for misuse. How is the situation in Rwanda? Can you clarify on this? Is corruption already involved with the government budget money that is from government funds only? Can I hear from those of you who carried out your research and your own experience? Thank you.
Set of their questions, which is a very important contribution. But starting with the participation of CSOs in government programs. Yes, the CSOs, to a large extent, or to some extent, must admit, has participated in some of the government programs and has been participating in some of the sectorial committees. But then we must also admit that our participation has been blunted, if I can use that word. But starting with the last 2 days we have been meeting and we have been deliberating on all this. And from our communique, you'll see that we are making a commitment to actively and proactively but continue to engage the government in some of these fora that are very important for us to raise some of the critical policy issues and some of the pro-poor issues that we think can be taken on by the government and other government partners. So our engagement has been limited, but we can promise to continue or to amplify it and to make it better. With that, our commitment is to continue to deepen our engagement with the communities, be able to use various communication channels to be able to bring up the issues that are affecting the poor and share them with the government and other development partners. Of course, this relates to capacity building, and our commitment is that to continue working on ourselves in terms of capacity building in terms of policy engagement and advocacy, capacity building in terms of documentation and coalition building and networking, capacity building in terms of human rights-based approach. On reporting, I think we have been reporting as maybe on the side of INGOs, he will give a comment on that, but through our various channels where we're supposed to give accountability to either those local NGOs, to the local government, and the international NGOs, to the migration, we have been making reporting, and you can access all our annual reports and various documentations either on our website or direct to our offices. Some of us will have open door policy. You can always access our documents. Then, conditionalities and tied aid. Enoch brings it clear that it is clear that there is no aid that will come without any conditionality. It is fair to believe and to accept that any aid will have conditionalities. Even look at yourselves when you're giving out something or you're giving a loan to your friend. You'll say, when are you giving it to me or to give it to you? Or maybe you give me something to ensure that maybe you're going to give back my money. Or there are certain conditions you may give. We must also appreciate the fact that this aid also comes from taxpayers of these respective countries. Like us, at a certain point we may grow up and also give out aid from our taxpayers. So the issue of accountability and transparency must be accepted here, but what we are saying is there should be fair or agreed on, not to use the word fair, but agreed on conditionalities. And if we have agreed on those conditionalities, then we must adhere to them. We must not see some other conditionalities through the windows, through ventilators inserted into the documents. So we must be strict on the conditionalities that we have agreed on. When the government signs with the donor and agree that we are giving you a ABC, you should be adhered to, and that's what we should stick on. You have had some countries where they cut aid because certain cultural beliefs have not been accepted by the government. The question should be, were they part of the agreement? Tied aid, to us, the civil society, we think tied aid should not be there. Tied aid should not be there. Why tied aid? So aid should be untied, unconditional. Why should you dictate to me that in order to give me aid, then the equipment I'm going to use, I must buy them from a certain country? Why? Let's ask ourselves. And we ask ourselves at the same time. The role of civil society to Agachiro Fund. It so happens that a majority of these local NGOs are Rwandan. And even those international NGOs work in the interest of Rwandans. So Agachiro Fund is embedded within our vision and our mission and our strategic objectives to this country. So already there is Agachiro within what we commit to do to this country. So we can continue to deliberate on this. I will not speak on behalf of the civil society because I'm not mandated to do so in corporate terms. But me as a person, I think Agachiro Fund will contribute to it, and here part of this dialogue is Agachiro itself. I don't know whether I've been clear or I've been more ambiguous. Corruption. Question from Karasira. Our report and several studies have indicated that Whereas there may be corruption in Rwanda, it is to a lower extent compared to other countries. And from our research, we have no reason not to believe that corruption in Rwanda is at its lowest. And we have no reason to believe that it is the reason why aid has been very effective. It is the reason why donor confidence has increased over time to continue disbursement of aid in Rwanda. We have not had a case where aid has been cut because Rwanda has misused funds, because a certain government official has embezzled funds. Other reasons that have happened may be related to suspension are political, and we may not drill into that. That is, there are technical people to handle that. But to us, in terms of the use of funds, in terms of corruption and mismanagement, we think there are several channels, institutions that have been established, policies that have been established to ensure that there is a minimum level of corruption. And this has happened. And that's why we have all reasons to believe that there is increased donor confidence in terms of aid management. Thank you very much.
Right. I've been asked about when I say that US aid is the least effective. I don't think I meant it was the least effective. What I said was that the US is the one who is assessed by the government under the government's performance assessment as the one that conforms least to the aid effectiveness agenda. If you look on page 102 in the report, or you can look in the policy brief, there is a reproduction of the government's assessments done in line with development partners against the government's targets. The second part of the question is, am I saying that the US doesn't pay what it promises? Well, the US, unlike most of the donors, does not make multi-year indicative commitments, let alone firm commitments. So Rwanda only knows from year to year what it's getting. Second point about aid is that it's often not paid in the year for which it's promised. It gets paid late. If you look at the donor performance assessment, I wasn't going to pick on the US, but I will, and you look for 2010-11, the US in that year dispersed 12% of the aid that it had committed for that year. The best donor in that year was the World Bank, who managed 85%. That gives you an idea of the difficulty the government has in planning its spending. Right? I was actually reading something about the US that said that the government is so late agreeing the budget, the US aid is always behind with being able to spend the money. And that was on one of the internet aid databases this morning. So you can look at that chart and see for yourselves. And that is against targets that the donors have agreed. Right, nobody's going to leave me alone if I don't comment on politics. I don't want to get embroiled in the current dispute, so I will say some other things about politics, which might at least show you what some of the debates are. First of all, politics with a small p is inevitably going to be involved in aid. Right? Politics with a small p is about power relationships. People who are giving money tend to have power over those who are receiving it. Whether it's the bank I want to borrow money for to start my business, my daughters want money from me, there is a power relationship. Clearly, in the global aid networks, some donors, I'm not going to name them, right? Some donors clearly use aid in various political ways. They're more likely to give it to their friends. Right? I'll use the UK, I'm from the UK. Right? The UK clearly gives more aid to members of the British Commonwealth, excluding Rwanda before it was a member of the British Commonwealth, than it gives to many other countries. It's not based purely on need. If aid were based purely on need, then Burundi would be doing much better than Rwanda. It doesn't. Right. Secondly, Rwanda, most countries in the world are part of the UN. There are a whole range of commitments to treaties that people sign up to as part of the UN. And when countries go against those treaties, other countries, the UN itself, sometimes take sanctions against them. One of the areas where the UN and members of the UN have an agreement is about one country intervening in the internal affairs of another country. When countries do it, when the US did it, for example, countries take sanctions against that country. Right? What I'm trying not to do is to get embroiled in what Rwanda may not have done or not done. What I'm trying to illustrate is what some countries took the UN report to be telling them Rwanda had done, and their actions following that are the same as they would have taken against other countries, whether they were developing countries or developed countries, that were judged to have intervened in the affairs of another country.
Yeah, I also just wanted to respond on some of the questions that have been raised. And I'll start with the issue of participation in policy-making processes by CSOs. I think, first of all, I commend you for the efforts your department and the government in general are trying to create have CSOs engaged. But I think one thing that we need to also discuss is how facilitative is government processes for CSOs to engage. In the context of where the meetings are held, the timelines that the meetings are held, whether they have resources or capacity to engage in those discussions. So it's not just that they come and add numbers and their presence is felt, but actually they are able to contribute. And I think legalization that they don't participate, I think, gives us an eye-opener that we need to start looking at what is really the problem. Do you think it could be true that they really don't want to participate, or there are other issues underlying they are not wanting to engage? So for me, I think it is important that we examine issues of how we facilitate civil society engagement with government processes, right? So that, and also, how do we select these CSOs? Which CSOs are we inviting to come and give inputs? How open and broad is that? And in terms of access to that kind of information, for them to be able to come and engage. So that it's not just a few groups that are invited, because you can have Rwanda CSO platform being invited to give input in the finance sector, in the health sector, in the natural and forestry sector, in the education sector, and yet in the organization there are only 5 people. Surely, how do you expect them to engage? So I think the issue of how we mobilize CSOs to engage is something that the government needs to really think about. And that's why I talked about in the element of creating an enabling environment, that you jointly discuss the issues of how we mobilize CSOs and their inputs into government processes, so that we don't just use the usual bureaucracy to invite CSOs, that there's a meeting, so come. The way you invite the normal development partners, and because those mechanisms don't necessarily work for CSOs. So I think it is important that we start dialoguing with them to find out what will be the best mechanism for them to engage. Having said that, I want to shift briefly to the issue of conditionality. I think this is something that will remain out there for discussion for a long time to come. But I want to stick my comments to about 3 areas. And this has to do with policy conditionality and program conditionality. I do not have problems whatsoever with fiduciary conditionalities, because those are basically elements that ensure that you report on time and that you adhere to the tenets of the contract. But with regard particularly to government, where there are issues of policy conditionalities and program conditionalities, there I have a problem. And part of the reasons why I have a problem with it is, one, for me, having policy conditionalities or program conditionalities compromises government leadership and democratic ownership. Because we say that Parliament is the main institution through which decisions or laws are made that then guides government's operations. But in a scenario where you tell Parliament, oh, you can't change this because IMF, or we read a deal with IMF on 1, 2, 3. Or you can't change this because the contract with the World Bank is this and this. It becomes problematic. And especially if the program is not in line with the government vision and development agenda. Certainly, if we are talking about promoting leadership and ownership, democratic ownership of development programs, we must act in the context that promotes that element. And eliminating conditionalities is one of those. Secondly, is the issue that if you've been in the debate of aid effectiveness, the question of absorption capacity keeps rising up all the time. And the approach that is taken is that government system is weak and they are not able to spend all the money. And that why should we trust them with additional money? Because they will not spend it anyway. So the blame comes back to us. But the point I'm trying to make is that once you have conditionalities, government have to comply with those conditions. And because they are parallel to the government system, it actually takes a lot of time for you to comply. Because the government has to align itself with the bureaucratic process and procedures of that particular donor in order to accept that money. But are we paying them to do compliance with donor projects, or are we paying them to implement development programs for the citizens of this country? Let's take an example. Signing a contract, and I think the president has actually been quoted that it takes 6 months to build a road by a Chinese, and it takes 6 months to negotiate a contract by the OECD-based countries. So if you are taking 6 months to negotiate, remember you have 1 year to implement a project as a government, 1 year to implement your national budget. If you spend 6 months negotiating, is the remaining 6 months sufficient for you to implement? And so it is on this basis that we say that in cases where we have program and policy conditionalities, indeed the elements of addressing development effectiveness are compromised. And that is why, in our view, it is important that we work towards eliminating conditionalities. There is nothing like fair or unfair or whatever. The issue is conditionalities compromise democratic ownership and also compromise our absorption capacity. The other issue that I also want to say that it also adds cost. Because we spend a lot of time trying to comply, particularly with the elements of the tied aid. We spend a lot of time. So we need to think about, if aid is to be effective, why should we spend a lot of time working on issues that really have no relevance with the development agenda? And in that regard, I think it is important that we really discuss. And going forward, for me, what is key is, since we are talking about partnership for development cooperation, in order for development effectiveness to be realized, let's talk about partnership principles. Let's see each other as equal, because it's a partnership and we are cooperating. Let's discuss if we can come up with partnership principles that we know that if ABCD happens, government knows that if ABCD happens, D, E, and F is going to happen. It is that simple. But we all must agree on it. And I don't really see that as affecting the development agenda. So the other issue is the issue of corruption. And that Now, we haven't really talked about it, but I think in terms of government accountability and transparency, that is one of the issues that is mentioned. And that's why we bring in the element of democratic ownership being embedded, so that citizens can claim their rights from their government. And it is not about somebody from outside there coming to write the report so that we get work done. But it is about citizens themselves making that demand. And that is why in the context of development of PSAN, we talk about human rights-based approach development, meaning that citizens themselves are able to claim these rights, and we need to work towards empowering them in order for them to claim their rights from their government. That's the way I see it. I will not comment much on the Agachito because I'm not very conversant with that finance industry. I'm sorry for that.
I just have a brief comment related to Peter, the Ministry of Natural Resources. Very sorry to hear that you're inviting CSOs and they're not able to come to your planning meetings. There may be, as Major has said, there may be some procedural barriers, timing of meetings place. I don't know, maybe something to look at, but what I can offer is, as NINGO, as the network of INGOs, if I can be, we can be a conduit for those invitations. If you want to send me invitations, we can circulate those to our network so that you can be sure that those in that sector that may be interested do get the invitation. I know that NINGO meets once a month, and we've just recently explored an idea of creating subgroups within the network based on sector to get more involved in sector working groups and these types of things, recognizing the need to be more involved in these issues. So I would offer that to you. Maybe we can talk at a break. Thank you.
Not really active or actively participating in the sector working groups. And the major reason is that we haven't come to a stage of really being organized. Because I personally have been participating in many of those, but the issue is I might just participate as an individual organization. And probably if I say I'm in Baraga doing agriculture work and probably say share the contribution I'm making in the sector with the Minister of Agriculture, I think that it has been done to some extent. But when it comes to a voice of the civil society in a way that can influence the entire sector, when it comes to civil society to say we rather see things differently from what is there, I think that's really, or probably support what's there if it's good. And definitely say this is the contribution as a civil society we have made in this sector. I think that's what has been lacking. And as many said, the entry point is really through the sector working groups, where they jointly plan, they monitor together, and they report together. So on our side, as a civil society, have been thinking of putting in place thematic working groups that can help us share information, analyze the situation, and then participate in the sectors with one voice. And also a stronger one that can really help to influence the work that's being done within various sectors. And one of the handicaps that is there is that civil society, local civil society organizations being heavily dependent on the donors' support, because, and also, doing or also involved in a kind of project-based management or approach in the work they are doing. It hasn't been easy, because I think my colleague said, if I'm an organization with only like 5 staff members, also managing like 5 projects, so do you think I have time to devote to the public interest issues rather than the small project I'm managing? I think that has been a challenge for most civil society organizations. And I think the other thing is also, when you participate in such meetings, do you go there with something tangible, something convincing that you are going to sell? So I think this is a debate that we are making, and you see how we can be better organized. And I think that's why we are even here as a civil society to reflect on that and see how we forge a way. And there is an idea that we have been thinking about of establishing a civil society fund that can help build their capacity. Because, there are many studies that have been conducted here and there. And the issue that comes out is the outcomes or the results from those researches are disseminated but not implemented. And even our capacity as a civil society to build on those outcomes or those researches and to engage with development partners in making sure that they are implemented, because most of the time they come up with very good recommendations. So it has been an issue, and it's really because of the capacity. So I think I would recommend that the civil society thematic working groups are strengthened for that purpose, because it can constitute, it can put in place a forum where we come together, discuss things on our own as a civil society, and then be able to engage with the government and also development partners. Secondly, it's about the transparency issue that has been raised. As you can see in this report, we have just seen the I think you've seen this report on the last page, where development partners or donors are providing information on finances and also their activities and also areas of interventions. It's not in the same table, but also areas of interventions. I think you have discussed about the division of labor issue. And I think it has been clear and good on both sides between the government and the donors or development partners. It hasn't been clear so far with civil society organizations, where we also provide such information to be captured in the same way, and also see how transparent we can be in also utilizing the resources. Because even the aid that goes to the civil society, it's also the people's money, the population's money. So I think it has to be done in the same way, and in the DPR, that took place in March this year. It was said that a software be put in place for civil society to also provide similar information, so that it's easier for both of all of us can hold accountable each other. And I think there is even a target that was put in place for us to meet. And I guess the software is being developed at the level of RGB, and we hope that we can get engaged or committed to doing that, so that us as a civil society are also transparent in the same way we are requesting the government and the development partners to be accountable. Because when you see the overall, if the first column where it said all, I think we see a lot of reds, and it shows that the government, the development partners, they still have a lot to do, and also I think the government also has its responsibilities to continue improving its management systems, as has been said. Going back to that, to this issue, I think we need capacity as well, because even for development partners, for them to be able to provide such information, I think there are also capacity involved. And that's why the civil society fund that's meant for capacity building is also of paramount importance. Then I think the Agachiro Development Fund, I personally don't think this is the right forum to discuss about that now. I think there are other forums that you can use to discuss about that, because that's another thing that has probably another audience, and it was not also on our agenda to discuss that. But again, I appreciate the idea is good, and even discussing about it in the light of finding a way for continuing or reinforcing our capacity to improve people's lives, and also contribute to the development of the country as organizations, and also as individuals, is really very, very much important. And I think, again, it comes with another principle that has always been working with civil society, of working on a voluntary basis, so that everything is not just done by money, but also giving out our willingness and our time and our capacities to contribute to the development of the country. But I think, if you allow me, that is an issue that you can discuss in another forum, if you don't mind. Thank you.
A question to the civil society, especially the ones that sponsored this study. I've seen that this is very good report or study, sponsored by the platform Action Aid, both are the NGOs, civil society, but they are highlighting progress achieved by the government of Rwanda, but not showing clearly their role. What was their contribution, the civil society's contribution to this, to the achievements? Because I think this was a very good opportunity for them to show the progress made, but also their contributions. but it is not highlighted here, and I think I can give that recommendation for them for showcasing your contribution, not only talking, but also putting in writing like this because it is read by many people. Thank you.
It's civil society agenda, but government agenda. But then to add on that is, as much as your point is very good, we do recognize that, or it should be recognized that it was not part of the TOR. The TOR was just to look at the aid effectiveness in Rwanda and who benefits, looking at aid as disbursed by the donors in the framework of the Paris, Accra, and Barcelona declarations.
Right now, the government of Rwanda requires and requests that international NGOs report financial data and impact data to the Directorate General of Immigration and Immigration. That's what we're asked and required to do. And international NGOs do that. If there is another ministry or facet of the government that you would like INGOs to report to that can be captured in a way that is disseminated and can show impact, can show financial data, can show transparency, INGOs are more than willing to do that. We've just been asked to do it this one way, we've been doing it. And we keep hearing that we're not reporting, but we are. We're doing what is asked. But if there's another solution, please, we would love to hear it. And if you want us to come up with that solution, then we're willing to work on that solution. But we're doing what is requested of us from the government of Rwanda. And we're going to make an effort because this is all, we hear this frequently, that we're not transparent, that we're not reporting what we're doing. The government of Rwanda is asking, but we're going to do whatever we can to try to dispel that inaccuracy proactively, but also open to other suggestions.
Ikibazo bambashije kugira ngo iganire hamwe namwe muri nyuma saa sita no kuvuga ngo beyond the oversight role, what can the parliament do to mitigate the unpredictability of aid? Sinzi niba hari icyo nakongeraho. Igihugu cyacu muri iki gihe kirimo kirahura na unpredictability of aid. Mwarabyumvise, si information bana mwabyumvise nk'uko twabyumvise. Icyo nzi cyo nuko leta y'u Rwanda yasinye amasezerano n'imfashanyo gufasha leta gushyira muri budget n'imishinga. Yewe nk'umudepite, umushinga w'ingengo y'imari narawutoye. Itegeko rirasohoka. Muri iryo tegeko izo mfashanyo, izo za grant, izo za loans ziri muri iryo tegeko yuko bizaba muri budget 2012 2013. Niba twararitoye ikaba itegeko bitewe n'inteko ishinga amategeko, ni ukuvuga yuko twabigize ibyacu. Twemeye ko izo mfashanyo ziza twazishyize muri annual revenue za leta uko bivugwa n'itegeko nshinga twemeye ko ayo mafaranga ashobora gukoreshwa kugira ngo dushyireho gukora ubukungu tujye mu bikorwa rusange by'amajyambere y'igihugu. Arabyumvise rero unpredictability ya aid ariho bagenzi banjye babivuze turimo turayibona ukwiye. Ni ukuvuga rero yuko ni ikibazo nubwo bagenzi banjye bo muri sosiyete sivile bavuze ko batagomba kujya impaka, ariko ntabwo ari bibi mu kugira ngo bakiganireho bakivuge, kuko kukinyura hejuru kutakiganiraho kandi muri representa groupe nini y'abanyarwanda ibyo byaba ari ukutareba ikibazo no kureba ibibazo igihugu cyacu kirahura nabyo. None rero mbere yo gukomeza, maze imyaka myinshi mbona yemera kuri 35 icyo nababwira cyo biriya bya effectiveness bya predictability muri iki gihe uko byagiye bitangira mu myaka 30 ishize habayemo improvement. Urebye iyo rwose engagement za commitment zakorewe i Paris, agenda ya CRA biriya byabereye Busan, harimo improvement mu mfashanyo n'ibintu birahari, ariko ntibuza ibibazo kuba bihari kuko ikibazo si ibyo ngibyo, ikibazo ahubwo impamvu harimo ibihugu bigomba gutanga imfashanyo, ibihugu bigomba kwakira imfashanyo. Icyo nicyo kibazo, ni ikibazo cyabajijwe hashize imyaka irenze 60. Impamvu hari ibihugu bifata imfashanyo hakaba n'ibindi bihugu bitanga imfashanyo. Ibisubizo byagiye bitangwa wenda, ariko niza kurangiza neza kugira igitekerezo cyane niza kubivugaho umuntu yatekereza. Uruhare rero rw'inteko ishinga amategeko ni uruhe? Nk'uko ari ugukora igenzurwa ry'ibikorwa bya guverinoma bishingira ku itegeko nshinga rya Repubulika y'u Rwanda. Iryo tegeko nshinga riha ububasha inteko ishinga amategeko bwo gukurikirana ibikorwa bya guverinoma, nayo mpamvu ari oversight institution y'igihugu. Ikabikora rishingiye muri iyo cadre kandi nk'uko bigenda mu bihugu bigendera kuri demokarasi, ibyo ariko iyo nzira ibyo bahisemo. Mu nteko ishinga amategeko nk'uko bihari, hari inzego zituma iyo oversight ishobora kubaho. Icya mbere dufite za komisiyo zihoraho. Ubu dufite komisiyo 9, sinzivuga zose, ariko buri komisiyo igenda byibura ikorana na minisiteri ebyiri muri sekiteri zinizi, ku buryo ku bijyanye no gutegura polisi, kujya impaka kuri politiki izashyirwa kuri politiki, kumenya uko izashyirwa mu bikorwa, ibyo za komisiyo zihoraho mu nteko ishinga amategeko ziganira n'abahagarariye guverinoma kugira ngo barebe uko politiki ishingiye, kureba n'uburyo ishyirwa mu bikorwa, niba koko bigera ku byo biyemeje. Ariko gushyira mu bikorwa politiki hagomba za rususu, ntabwo ari ugutekereza gusa kuko ngo nzakora gutya, ugomba kubishakira ubushobozi cyane cyane bushingiye ku mutungo wo kugira ngo bishyirwe mu bikorwa. Bakaba itegeko nshinga rikaba ryarahaye inteko ishinga amategeko umutwe w'abadepite ububasha bwo gusuzuma bije y'igihugu. Tukaba dufite komisiyo ireba ibya bije, isuzuma umushinga w'itegeko watanzwe na guverinoma, ikawusuzuma mu rwego rusange byose, ikanawusuzuma ishingiye kuri budget agency, urwego rwose ruhabwa amafaranga, bakareba niba amafaranga muto bayahaye ahagije kugira ngo birangize inshingano zayo. Mu Rwanda rero bikaba yuko muri iyo komisiyo iyo bumvikanye n'uhagarariye guverinoma hari ubwo bashobora gukora ubugororangingo amendment bagakora relocation amafaranga ya za ressources bumvikanye ku bireba uko basanze mu biganiro bagiranye mu mpaka bagiranye hashobora kugira izindi priorite zibaho ibyo birakorwa bikaba rero nyuma yaho iyo bibaye bakanabitora nubwo tuba dufite garanti yuko umutungo wa leta ressources za leta zihari iyo nababwiye ziriya za grant nababwiye zirafasha ngo ziriya nkunga n'inguzanyo nuko baba basuzumye bagasanga yuko hari ubwumvikane bwabaye hagati y'abatanga imfashanyo hagati y'abatanga imfashanyo n'igihugu cyacu yuko bihari ko atari ntabwo babivugira mu magambo ni ibintu biba byanditse yuko ayo mafaranga azaboneka kandi azatangwa muri uwo mwaka wa bica bisobanura rero ko igihe iyo tubitoye tuba twizeye ko dukurikije impapuro dukurikije kontaro yuko ayo mafaranga muri iyo budget azaboneka ndetse hari n'ubwo bibaho hari ubwo twigeze kuvuga hano abavuze ibintu bya unpredictability uko batinda kuyatanga hari igihe kubera yuko umwaka ugiye kurangira haba hari uzatanga amafaranga utarayarekura ku buryo hari igihe bijigera mu kwezi kwa kane mu nteko ishinga amategeko umushinga wawo ugitangira bakiwiga tugera mu kwezi kwa gatandatu harimo n'abandi biyongereyeho bavuga yuko amafaranga yabonetse ku buryo umushinga waje ahubwo tugera mu kwezi kwa gatandatu amafaranga ashobora kuba atandukanye n'ayo umushinga wese kubera ko bose bumvise ko ari ngombwa kugira ayo mafaranga atanu ibyo ariko perezida w'u Rwanda ngo iyo yatowe ukurikije impapuro ukurikije ibiganiro byagiye biba izo resources zose ziba ari available mu mpapuro abasigaye rero kuzayikora iyo budget igatorwa budget igagaragara muri journal officiel igatangira gushyirwa mu bikorwa mu rwego rwa treasury muri executive na za agence budgetaire zose uko zagiye zihabwa amafaranga ntabwo bivuga rero ugasanga nta kibazo ufite ibibazo bari byiza n'abandi bose bakabimenya hanyuma hakaba n'ikibazo cyo gukora analysis y'ibibazo kumva uko ibibazo biteye kugira ngo ubishakire ibisubizo bikwiye ibi rero bisaba yuko nk'abafite uruhare bose muri process y'imicungire ari imfashanyo ari umutungo yuko bagomba kuzuzanya no kugira flux d'information na za information zimwe kugira ngo abantu bose babirebe ku gihe kimwe kandi bashobore no gufata imyanzuro no gufata bahereye ku mpaka zagiwe ku bitekerezo byatanzwe bakerekana icyemezo cyafatwa n'ikihe kugira ngo ibyashyizwe mu bikorwa bigaragare neza kandi bikiri mu nzira inyuze ikindi ni uko abantu bagomba kumva ko kugenzurwa atari nanjye gukoresha ijambo ritari ryiza atavuga kugenzurwa ni ukuvuga yuko ibyo ucunga ntabwo ari n'ibyawe urabigenzura tekereza noneho iyo ucunga iby'abantu benshi iyo ucunga iby'igihugu nawe ibyawe ucunga ku giti cyawe iyo utabigenzura bishobora gucika haswe noneho rero kugenzurwa igihe ari iby'abanyarwanda ari iby'abaturage bose ni ukuvuga yuko kugenzurwa ari exercice ari igikorwa abantu bagomba kureba ko ari igikorwa gisanzwe kigomba kubaho, kandi yuko iyo ubikora buri gihe uzajya uba witeguye kugenzurwa ukabyemera. Iyo ushatse kugira icyo uhisha, burya nuko haba hari icyo utekereza kibi wakoze utakoreye neza abo bagushinze yo kugira ngo ubibakore. Bikaba bisaba rero yuko ko kwitegura kugenzurwa kuri byose ni igikorwa gituma bitanga confidence, ukwemera yuko ibi aho amafaranga yagiye ibyateganijwe bizashyirwa mu bikorwa. Mukaba mwumvise biriya bya yuko u Rwanda rwabonye nuko imyaka yabaye ishaka kugira ngo abantu barebe igenzurwa yo gukurikiranwa yo kureba iki gihe no kuvuga ko ari ugufungura kugira ngo abantu barebe koko ko ibyo ugamije gukora ari byo. None rero kugira ngo tumenye ku kibazo cyabajwe cyane predictability, gitangira navuze nti tubirimo biragaragara uretse bya byo twabonye muri raporo uko yatanga batinze, reka bayaguha nabo bashobora kuba bafite ibibazo, bashobora no kuba bafite birokrasi, bashobora no kuba bafite ubushake, bashobora kuba nabo habaye dysfonctionnement, ibintu bidakora neza, igihe babivugiye nabo ntibabikore. Kuko nawe iyo bikugezeho kugira ngo ushyire umushinga mu bikorwa, hari igihe abakozi bawe cyangwa bamufatanije bagira uburangare, bakora planning itariyo, planning bakoze ugasanga ntibayubahirije neza, nawe ukazagera gutyo ugasanga ayo baguteganije kugira ngo uzayashyire mu bikorwa nawe waratize. Birasaba rero yuko buri wese yumva ko afite responsibility mu kurangiza inshingano n'ibyemezo yafashe yifatiye kugira ngo umushinga ujye ashyira mu bikorwa bijyemo. Ikindi kandi ni kubimenya tukabyumva ko ibintu biri muri byo cyambere, ariko ikindi cya kabiri murumva nk'iyo bagize gutya imfashanyo zigaragara, igihugu binyuze muri za institution zose cyarafashe icyemezo. Twebwe nk'umuparlementaire iyo ndabonye ibyo bizafatwa kuvuga yuko iyo mpuye n'abanyarwanda babwira uko ibihugu byadufashije, ariko zikumva ngo byahagaze, ukabyumva ubinyujije muri za agence de presse, byaranyuze mu nteko, n'ayo mafaranga yarafashwe mu nteko zabo baremeye kuzatanga, biba byarabaye ikibazo hagati y'abaturage b'ibyo bihugu. Noneho bigahinduka ikibazo cya tekinike hagati za executive, ukabyumva ari porte parole ubivuga, icyo gihe ubifata ute? Ni ukuvuga rero yuko niba odora yagusa no mu za institution z'igihugu zose zibigemo, tugomba no kwemera yuko ni ukurikije uko mereye mu gihugu cyacu, ntabwo inteko itararatifiya izo porogaramu ntabwo zakwije kuzije mu kontabilite. Ni ukuvuga ngo biba byarenze urwego rwa tekinike, biba byageze mu rwego rw'imibanire y'ibyo bihugu, biba byaragutanze ukareba niba uko mubifata. Ni ukuvuga rero yuko haracyari yo kugira ngo bimprovinge iki kibazo cya partnership mu mibanire y'ibihugu no mu mibanire y'imfashanyo. Ikindi cyane ni uko za porogaramu zose zagombye gushyirwa hamwe, ko bimwe bintu bije, ibindi biri hirya, ibindi biri, kugira ngo iyo ufata icyemezo uzi ko bimeze, ufata icyemezo cy'abantu bose bikacyumva neza kandi kikagira icyo gitanga. Hanyuma bigeze kubivuga, imfashanyo, inkunga n'inkunga ni uburenganzira. Sinsubira mu bya kera ariko hari amagambo yagiye avugwa hano ugasanga nayumvise hashize imyaka 30 sosiyete sivile itangira kujyamo muri myaka za 80 nyuma ya crise ya peteroli yabaye barebeye na corruption harigeze kubaza ikibazo cya corruption byagaragara mu bihugu bimwe sosiyete sivile na za ONG zabaye inzira yo kugira ngo zifashe abaturage ariko hari igihe kigera abantu bakumva yuko n'ibihugu nabyo bigomba kwikosora kandi birimo bikosora ku buryo bugaragara iyo bumvikanye kuri porogaramu zigakora ubu none rero baravuga ati dutanga imfashanyo aho turi hari ikibazo nagiye nibaza nagira ngo uzakisubize imfashanyo byaje gute nze muri za mirongo mbere ya independence ibihugu bya Afurika byabona imfashanyo u Rwanda ntirwafashwa abarukolonije bavana ku mitungo bakaba aribyo badukorera twigeze tuba umugogoro ku bihugu byadukolonije cyangwa hari ibyavaga twigeze tubaho ubwo yabaye umugogoro ku Babirigi Angola yabaye umugogoro kuri Portugal East Africa yabaye umugogoro ku Bwongereza ibi kugira ngo byagenze gute siza gusubira mu magambo yavuze imfashanyo tugomba kuzireba uko ndabivuga nk'umudepite tugomba kureba kugira ngo twumve imfashanyo uruhande rwazo niko zigomba gukoreshwa n'impamvu zihari kuri impamvu babona imfashanyo sivuga menshi ariko niba tutari umugogoro kuri icyo gihe kituma noneho bihinduka umwanya wo kugira ngo abantu noneho bijye mu rwego rwo kugira ngo abantu batange za conditionnalité zimwe na zimwe zidashoboka murakoze
I can see the kind of code inside here, and I hope it is stopping us from letting go. Yeah. It is my privilege I feel honored to be able to read a statement of the Rwanda Civil Society organizations on development effectiveness. The Rwanda Civil Society organizations had a 2-day consultative workshop on development effectiveness on 29th and 30th of August at Serena, and they came up with the following statement. The Rwanda Civil Society statement to this dialogue reads like this. We, the Rwanda Civil Society, made of Rwandan national and international non-government organizations, the media and faith-based organizations, have gathered at the invitation of the Rwanda Civil Society platform to participate in a 2-day consultative workshop on development effectiveness in Rwanda. Having discussed and considered the following, the main essence of development effectiveness is to address issues of the most vulnerable, reduce inequality, and promote human rights-based approach to development. And that the Busan Partnership outcomes document provides the basis for our work as a society. Having expressed concerned that unfair conditionality and unpredictability of aid compromises democratic ownership and leadership and is not consistent with the guiding principles and leads to ineffectiveness of aid. That the bureaucratic documentation imposed by donors demonstrated lack of confidence in government technical capacity to design and implement projects effectively. Having noted that aid cuts have had and are having a negative impact on the lives of the poor, having exchanged ideas on how to improve an enabling environment for civil society to engage meaningfully as rightful actors in development effectiveness debates, we recommend the following. The Rwanda Civil Society platform should bring together the voices of its member organizations in ensuring that aid is implemented effectively. Enhance coordination and communication mechanism among members of the civil society. Ensure capacity building for its member organization on promoting aid effectiveness. Strengthen the civil society decentralization structures in rural areas. Support and facilitate the registration process of the civil society organization. Work through its membership base at the grassroots level to identify real issues of the community that inform its advocacy. The government should recognize the rightful role of the civil society in participating in policy process, timely engage civil society to policy processes planning, in brackets, planning, implementation, and M&E, monitoring and evaluation. Enhance an enabling environment for the civil society to contribute to the development process. Provide necessary information and uphold transparency on aid flows and public expenditure. Take decisive action to enable civil society organizations to exercise their roles as independent development actors and minimize the legal and bureaucratic barriers to the civil society operations in Rwanda. Recommendation to the donors. Donors should provide funds with agreeable conditionality and work towards development of partnership agreement. Anti-aid to enhance development effectiveness. Align aid with government development plans and programs. Consider the country context in addressing specific needs of the citizens. Earmark extra budget funds to strengthen civil society's effective participation in development agenda. We, the participants also committed of the civil society also committed to. We participants commit to being proactive and participate actively in government planning, not being negative or positive as a matter of principle, but rather an objective actor that adds value through his position. Enhances dialogue among ourselves on one hand, and with donors and government on the other. Develop a post-Busan action plan and acquire adequate expertise to implement our part of the recommendations and commitments. Strengthen our internal system and structures for more effective and inclusiveness. Uphold democracy, transparency and accountability in our actions both to government and to our beneficiaries. This assembly mandates the civil society platform to reconvene in 6 months to assess headways made in implementing the commitment. Done at Kigali on 30th of August 2012. Ladies and gentlemen, those were the recommendations and commitments from the civil society organizations, recommendations to the donors and recommendations to the government. And these are probably that we hope that even, I think, even the discussion that we've had today kind of reflect a lot of issues that have been raised here. And we hope that this dialogue and the statement that we're making today is going to help us to shape a final communique that will be brought forward to our other stakeholders. Thank you.
Icyambere gusubiza ikibazo yarangirijeho kugira ngo na moderateur yabivuze gatoya ati mbere yuko ngira ngo u Rwanda Repubulika ntabwo ifashe zari ziragenda hazi byo gufasha se byaje gute nanjye ntekereza ko byumva ruko imibereho yarahindutse urabona nk'iyi nama turi munekeza ko kera umwami yakoraga inama ashobora kuba atabitora ahantu hameze nko muri Serena ashobora kuba bayishora wenda ahantu munsi y'igiti bakaganira ariko ubu urabona tutagera muri Serena tugashaka abantu bashyira mu ndimi eshatu ugasanga bagenda byongera amikoro kandi mu by'ukuri atariyongereye kuko yagombye ko yiyongera n'ibijyanye n'aho tugenda imodoka dushaka gutwara ibyo dushaka kurya ko byateguwe ntekereza ko byose byagiye byongera amikoro akenewe kandi dushobora kuba byaratangiye wa muganga cy'ubukoroni bigatuma tunamenyerwa ubuzima ku buryo byasaba yuko twizirika umukanda hari ibihugu bimwe bigiye bitangira abantu gusoma byakorewe iwabo gutangira kugenda ku magare kugira ngo ugende mu ijipo wenda igura nk'inzu cyangwa igura amadovize menshi cyane ibyo byose ni ibitekerezo bishobora kuba byaratumye inkunga igenda yiyongera noneho na bije ikagenda yiyongera cyangwa dukomera mu kintu abaterana kuko ku byumva wenda ni deba twakomeza kuganira hanyuma ikibazo ushaka kubaza honorable n'ikijyanye yadusobanuriye neza uruhare rw'inteko ishinga amategeko mu gutora aya mategeko ndetse anatuma iriya nkunga iba bije ijya muri bije y'igihugu hari ikintu kimwe nibazaga wenda sinzi banakurikiranye neza kijyana n'urwego rw'inteko ishinga amategeko nagira ngo nabwo wenda murushaho kudusobanurira bijyanye no gukurikirana noneho ya mibanire iri hagati y'ama executive uti bigeraho wenda ugasanga bibaye hagati y'imibanire y'ibihugu wenda bagafashanya nko mu Rwanda ntabwo tuzi ko ubu ifashanya no kugenda ihagarara ese nk'inteko ishinga amategeko muri rwa rwego rwo guhamagara abantu bo muri mu butegetsi kuvuga ubuyobozi bw'igihugu bagasobanura ese ibirimo kuvugwa ni ibiki ese kuki barimo guhagarika inkunga ese impamvu bashingiraho bahagarika inkunga zaba arizo nagira ngo none mudusobanurire muri izo nshingano icyo mwaba murimo gukora murakoze cyane
nta bibazo mfite ahubwo mfite amahirwe mbonye honorable yaje umuhagarara inteko so mfite ibyifuzo bitandukanye nashaka kumugezaho icya mbere ni uko mu kinyarwanda baca umugani ngo amavuta y'umugabo ntamuraye ku mubiri si bwo bwa mbere imfashanyo y'u Rwanda bayihagaritse byaranabaye na mbere n'ubu ngubu birongeye birabaye ariko nanone birongeye biradutunguye kuko na mbere byadutunguye so nkaba ngiye nsaba ko byajya mu itegeko ko nibatumurikira ingengo y'imari bazajya badusobanurira bati amafaranga twebwe abanyarwanda dufite twakuye mu misoro y'abanyarwanda mu bucuruzi twakoze amafaranga twabonye ndetse wenda twavuga nibura n'amafaranga y'inguzanyo za banki twizeye ko izo banki zizaduha ni aya ngaya n'ibyo tuzayakoresha ni ibi ngibi mukatwereka iyo ngengo y'imari ikaba ariyo ngengo y'imari la structure de nos programmes hakaba noneho mukavuga muti ibi ntibigenda neza hari abagira neza bavuze ko bazaduha imfashanyo iyo mfashanyo dore bavuze ko ari aya ngaya tuzayikoresha nayo gutya. Ça devient la superstructure. On a la structure ibyo twishatsemo hagati yacu nk'abanyarwanda, noneho ibyo bizatuma ibintu bibiri. Icya mbere ni uko inteko izavuga priorite za mbere z'igihugu cyacu dukeneye: uburezi bw'abana bacu, ubuzima bw'abana bacu, umutekano w'igihugu cyacu. Ibintu bya mbere by'ingenzi bikoreshwe mu mafaranga tuzi ko batazayakata ejo cyangwa ejo bundi. Noneho n'ibindi, umuco ni kwidagadura n'ibintu nk'ibyo, mubishyire muri ya bije yacika itacika, ubuzima ntibwahagarare. Ugasanga icyo kintu cyadufasha twebwe, kubera ko ngubu bazajya bavuga ingengo y'imari mu nteko, tuvuge tuti si iyo ngengo y'imari bavuze ko mbona ari byiza, hari uwamenya ejo tuhabyuka bayikase bya biri byose batubwiye ntihagire na kimwe gikora. So icyo ni icya mbere nashaka, ni icyifuzo natangaga. Icya kabiri ni uko iyo ubajije abantu bahagarariye ibihugu bidutera inkunga mu Rwanda, bakubwira bati impamvu twakase inkunga ni uko twe dufite inteko z'iwacu zihagarariye abaturage, zitubwira ngo twebwe abaturage badutoye nk'ababahagarariye ntabwo batwemerera ko icyo kiriya gihugu cyakora ibikorwa nk'ibi tugakomeza gutanga yanyu. Ariko ugasanga abajya noneho kwisobanura ahubwo ari leta, ari guverinoma. Nkaba icyifuzo cya kabiri ari uko habaho gahunda mu nteko ihamye yo kugira imibanire n'izindi nteko zo mu bihugu bitanga inkunga, bakagira an aggressive public relations awareness program from our parliament, bagira buri munsi ku wundi. Njyewe hari abantu dukorana baba muri ibyo bihugu, abadepite b'iwabo babaza amakuru ku Rwanda, bakambaza amakuru mu Rwanda, ntayabaha bakajya kuyabwira abadepite b'iwabo. Bibaho kenshi umunsi ku wundi. So byaba ngombwa ko tugira iyo gahunda, inteko yacu iganira n'izindi nteko umunsi ku wundi basobanurira. Igitekerezo cya gatatu nibyo bakomeje kuvuga ko imfashanyo icitse igira ingaruka ku bakene. Nibyo niko bivugwa, niko biranashoboka, ariko ntibyagombye kuba fatalite, ntabwo bikagombye kugenda gutyo. Uyu munsi nk'uko Kagaba yari yabivuze, uyu munsi kubera ko dufite ikibazo, twongere twicare tuvuge tuti ntibibe gutyo, amafaranga niba aid yacitse ntibigire ingaruka ku bakene, ku batishoboye, ahubwo amenaje priorite zacu, twongere dusubiremo mu byo twumvaga by'ingenzi. Umuntu ntasabe inguzanyo ya miliyoni 150 kugira ngo yubake inzu yo guturamo ngo ayibone. Umuntu ntagende, abantu bagende muri public transport nk'uko Kagaba yavuze n'ibindi nk'ibyo. Ariko ibyo bintu nubwo bari kubivuga, dushobora gukomeza kubivuga bikanaba koko kuba imfashanyo yacitse biza bikagira ingaruka ku baturage. Ariko ubwo twabimenye, ibihe byamenyekanye niba ari bikisha isuka, so tugire igikorwa bikora. Icya nyuma nashaka kurangirizaho ni ukuba inteko yacu niyo yemeza ingengo y'imari. Ariko nari numva inteko yavuze ngo ayo mafaranga mugiye kutuzanira ntabwo tuyashaka, kubera ko iyo nguzanyo kwanza muzayishyura mute, cyangwa ayo mafaranga y'ubuntu baduhaye hari ibindi bintu mutatubwiye hano by'inkurikizi ingaruka ashobora kutugiraho. Izo conditionality, so mitigating the conditionalities of the aid. So ibyo nabyo tukaba dushaka ko badusobanurira uburyo burambuye, hakaza amafaranga amwe n'amwe muvuga mutoya ayo murakoze, twari twifuza rwose, turabona kuyabona no kutayabona, kuyabona aribyo byatubwira ingaruka kurusha. Murakoze.
Murakoze. Nanjye mfite ibibazo bibiri nashaka kubaza honorable. Icya mbere namubaza nuko
wakwivuga
yitwa Anastase Gakire, nkaba nkora muri RDG. Murebye inkunga igenerwa u Rwanda, ngira ngo mugire umwanya wo kubiganiraho niyo mugiye gutora itegeko rya budget. Ese baba mufite amakuru wenda yatwereka uko yaba iri repariti ugeragije ufashe icyaro n'imijyi. Icyo ni icya mbere, mukatwereka wenda nk'imibare pourcentage. Ikindi cya kabiri, nk'umuntu ufite experience umaze igihe kinini mu kazi, ese iki kibazo cyo guhagarika inkunga kimaze kuba kangahe ku Rwanda? Mukaba mwagerageza no kutwereka n'ibibazo by'ingutu, cyangwa se mukatwereka niba hari ukundi kuntu u Rwanda rwagiye rubyitwaramo kugira ngo ku guhagarika inkunga kutagira icyo guhungabanyaho haba ku bukungu ndetse n'imibereho y'Abanyarwanda. Murakoze.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm from the Dutch Embassy. I'd like to make a few comments, for example, to what Kevin said, and also to the conclusions of your study and some of the things that are going on now. I think to have a feeling and a view that a country should not be dependent on aid is a message that has come all the time from Rwanda, and I think it's a very good message. But to think now that with a budget for 50% financed by external aid, you can say, well, earmark that financial aid from foreign countries for culture and sports and non-priorities is the best way to lose the money immediately, I would say. Because money needs to be integrated in the real priorities of the country to fight poverty. So don't think that you can make kind of key priorities that are financed by internal revenues and think that the remainder of the money can be used for what you call luxury things. If that's the way you perceive it, then there will be no support in our parliament whatsoever for supporting what you then consider to be luxury. So we like aid to be part of priorities of the country in fighting poverty and getting growth going, which is aligning to EDPRS 1 and in future to EDPRS 2. So that's I think, must be very important. When reading the recommendations on the aid effectiveness study, I think rightly you very much give preference and importance to the Busan agenda of aligning aid, untying aid, and giving aid as much as possible in modalities using the capacities of the country, which is budget support. And that's fully integrated into the budget. And I think if you look at the predictability of budget support over the past 5 years, that has been pretty high, much higher than other forms of aid. And the unpredictability in part has come because Rwanda performed well, and there have been additional tranches of some of the budget support operations. And so I would say that if you support that modality and support the way that it can be an effective contribution to growing out of the need for aid, that's very welcome. On the other hand, of course, it's been reflected now a few times, it is a contract, and with budget support there is the issue of it being vulnerable to to criticism and to a situation in which a dialogue needs to be started on whether the underlying principles, as it's called in the agreements, whether those have been met. And I know in 2008 and now in 2012, both cases, it's linked to very, very difficult international discussions on the regional issues. So they are not linked to the internal Rwandan situation, and maybe not go now into the details of the allegations of the UN and the reply of Rwanda and how to deal with that. A proper dialogue is needed there, and a way out for the region to come to stability and regain peace is of course very important, and that's a dialogue that needs to go on. Yes, that's part of the deal, that at a certain moment when there are questions to be asked, that at that point in time you need to sit together and come to an agreement. And for the time being, indeed, for the budget support, I wouldn't say it is cut, but it is put on hold until further developments are there in the field. It is a risk. I agree with all NGOs in the country and also with the representative of Parliament. This is a risk to have as a country. that if you take the most effective aid that's possible, which is integrated into your budget, that especially that one is a modality which is also these conditions on on situations where, let's say, trust and progress needs to be discussed before things can go on. I don't think you can have it both. So it's a very difficult way well, it's difficult to have at the same time full predictability and have a number of issues on conditionality. The two are not fully the same, and both are present in that modality. So that's what I would like to contribute for now. So an aid cut. I know in 2008 the Netherlands had an aid cut, or in the end it was presented as if our aid to Rwanda was cut, which was not at all true. We have suspended, and then in the end, in our general budget support. And that was also related to UN report and related to issues in DRC. Now, 4 years later, the same discussion is there again, and it's you can believe it's one that we're struggling with very much. We hope to find together with Rwanda solutions there, so that aid will not be cut, but that there will be a way forward in also addressing the issues of the poor in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sula. And then, yeah.
Thank you very much. And it's good that someone from the Dutch government has made some contribution regarding to the issue that we're talking about here. And actually that's where I will start from. As we said earlier on from the morning, in the morning and even in the report, the issue that we're trying to raise is related to unpredictability of aid and aid conditionalities. What we're saying is, and the issue, and what we all agree on, is that there are some conditions related to policy that maybe can be agreed on. But another issue that we're saying that once that has been agreed on and an MOU has been signed in relation to disbursement or release of funds from a donor country to a recipient country, then that agreement should be respected. So in this case, if I take an example of the recent aid cut, if I try to be controversial a little bit, and maybe since the Dutch government was one of the countries that upheld, I don't know whether it was aid cut or it was withholding. Yes. And yet, it is one of the countries that were contributing funds to the direct budget support. Meaning that the money that had been earmarked for Rwanda had been earmarked for certain strategic pro-poor issues or poor programs. And now that the funds have been withheld or delayed, if I'm to be diplomatic in that sense, it means that the programs of the pro-poor have been delayed. The delivery of services to the pro-poor has been delayed or curtailed to a certain extent. Now, I wanted to ask, well, don't you think that the withholding of aid is a punishment of the poor for perceived wrongs of the government? When these actually the poor are not the ones that are, and yet even the wrongs, the perceived wrongs, are not embedded within the MOU for the release, or they are not part of the conditionalities for disbursement of funds to, for example, to Rwanda. That is one. Also, I would think that in the end, and to stop this kind of gymnastics that do happen, where you cut aid, you will hold today aid, tomorrow you release it, another day because UN panel of experts have made some allegations, and then next time when they will say Rwanda maybe in Darfur has captured some territories, then they will hold some funds. When they say Rwanda has some issues with Burundi, then they will hold some funds. I would think that there is a strategic way that donors should think beyond this abrupt withholding of funds in view of the public, of the population interests or the poor people's interests. Regarding what Kevin talked about Parliament, not some extent not to be allowing certain grants or aid to be given to a country. I would think when I was still a journalist, I'm well versed that the Parliament, when a grant is given to a country, they make a whole bill within the Parliament, and the parliamentarians vote for it to accept that grant or not. And I think that is still there. What I wanted to ask the Member of Parliament is that in view of the unpredictability of aid, in view of tied aid, what is the government doing, rather the Parliament doing, to encourage the government to make sure that there is a sustainable way of domestic savings and better resource management? In this case, I may not be alluding to the recently launched Agachio Fund, but I'm talking about some more in strategic terms regarding to domestic savings. We have some consolidated funds like the National Security Fund. How is the Parliament ensuring that such kind of fund, the money is well utilized and to ensure that it can help to bridge the gap or to fund certain strategic long-term investments, and also to ensure that resources in view of such a difficult situations, instead we look at some of the administrative costs which Kevin was suggesting that should be instead transferred to be tagged with some of the aid that we get from donors, which I think it is technically impossible. Probably we can look at cutting some of the administrative costs. Of course, I would bring in, maybe the MP can clarify on this, but to me as a person, I was a little bit disappointed at the time when the country is facing a situation of withholding aid, and then the parliamentarians are increasing their retirement benefits.
And of course, if there's anybody in the panel who also wishes to respond to some of the questions, feel free.
Murakoze, nagira ngo mbashimire kuri ibibazo mubajije, kuko bimwe ni ibibazo ariko byinshi ni ibitekerezo byavamo n'ingamba z'uko buri wese yakwifata, uko igihugu cyakwifata, uko inzego z'igihugu zakwifata, uko ndetse na sosiyete sivile yakwifata ku bibazo bijyanye n'iki kibazo kijyanye n'imfashanyo. Bibavuze mu mibereho yarahindutse, abantu bicaraga munsi y'igiti, sinzi niba hari ariko uzareba amafoto y'umwami yakoreshaga inama aho yicaraga. Makurangire hari i Nyanza, hari santere ihari yitwaga Dosive, uzareba yuzuye, uzayishyira mu myaka 50 na kangahe, uzareba icyo uzajya no muri tuzi, uzajya mu Kabere, n'inzu yari yubatswe abashaka gukora inama. Yego ntabwo hangana gutya nka Serena, ariko naho hari ntabwo rwose bakoraga munsi y'igiti, nacyo bari barakivuyemo. Ntabwo ari numva ko ibyo bari niho igihe cyari kigeze, kandi rero bari bakeneye abantu bangana gutyo kugira ngo bafate ibyemezo bitari ibitekerezo. Ngumva rero yuko ntabwo ari byabiteye, kuko iyo ndi gukora ubushobozi bwaje, ariko nigeze kuvuga nti twigeze tuba umugogoro ibihugu byari byaradufashe niko byari byaradukoresha. Ibyo byubaka abana ibyabo mu mutungo waturuka hano uzagenda urebe za bije zateguwe bazikwemezo z'icyo gihe ntabwo zari muri za tiriyoni ariko byari muri za miliyoni magana angahe y'icyo gihe. Niyo yakoraga yakoraga amashuri yabikoraga uzayibona aho yaturukaga uzayibona urebe nawe urwego rwari birimo ariko yose aho yaturukaga berekanaga aho yaturukaga nabonaga yaturukaga hanze. Uzarebe muri ibyo bitabo uzakurikirane uzarebe uzasanga bakurikirana ubushobozi bwari buhari kandi twari dufite igihugu kituyobora n'umuryango wa Nations nabo baturebereraga. Tuzarebe ayo maretoye uko abantu bagifatamo uko nabene byagira isomo uko byagendaga kugira ngo abantu bahitemo uko babaho n'uko bakora. Cyakora niba ari uko ari imibereho yahindutse tukaba ari umuntu tusigaye tunywa amazi ikintu nyacyo ko ntibanywa amazi ntabwo ariyo banywa ntangahe ariko nabyo ni byiza ku buzima bw'umuntu ntabwo wabyanga kuko byatwigishije ibindi bishya kugira ngo abantu babeho neza. Hanyuma rero ikibazo cyo kwizirika umukanda tugakora nk'uko inkunga igenda yagiye kwizirika umukanda rero ni notion abantu bagomba gutekereza kwizirika umukanda ni ukuvuga ko hari igihe iyo wiziritse udashobora no kugira tudukora growth kugira ngo ushaka kugira ngo kugabanya ari ugomba kugabanya by'iburuga n'ibikosa gukora extension kugira ngo ibikeya bibyare byinshi. Ugakora kugira ngo ibikeya bibyare byinshi atari kuvuga ngo ureduce kwizirika umukanda ngo uhorote ariko byibura ukagenda uko uteye intambwe. Niba wari ufite reyo ya gatanu nako diametere ya gatanu byibura muri metero imwe ukagira diametere y'umunani ukagenda ukura ibyo nabyo niba bizeye kugira ngo iki ngiki gishobora kubyara iki kandi birashoboka ku cyangombwa ni innovation n'ibitekerezo bishobora gushyirwa hamwe. Hanyuma mu ruhare rw'inteko ishinga amategeko mu gukurikirana na relation hagati y'inteko ishinga amategeko zo hanze nigeze gusa naho mbivugaho ariya masezerano nako dekarasiyo ya kane plan d'action ya kane na biriya byakorewe gusa igihugu cyacu kiri parti prenante muri izo dekarasiyo cyarabyemeye kandi basaba yuko inteko zishinga amategeko zigira uruhare. Sinzi niba umugenzi nawe yageze kugira icyo kivugaho. Ni ikibazo abantu bagomba kongera kwibazaho niba inteko yabo yaravuze ese hari seanse yabo y'inteko zishinga amategeko z'ibyo bihugu zabaye zemeza yuko noneho izo mfashanyo zihagarara. Harimo ikibazo cy'imibanire y'ibihugu cyangwa na relation z'ibihugu. Niba twemera tuti kugira ngo ibyo byemerwe n'uko inteko zishinga amategeko z'organe zemeza zerekana yuko byinshi mu mategeko y'igihugu n'abandi hagombye kuba ikindi cya reciprocity. Ntubyumve kuri agence de presse bikubwira ko byabaye twumve yuko niba bigiye kuba nuko niba na birimo y'inteko gusa no kubivuga no buryo kuko ibyo nibyo bituma haza icyizerane hagati y'imibanire ko niba ari Paris ari aka bantu yuko ibihugu bitanga imfashanyo n'ibihugu byakira imfashanyo bigomba gufata. Ni ukuvuga yuko hari evolution yabaye niwe yize kuvuga ni habaye improvement koko zarabaye muri kuko nkurikije ibyo nari nzi kandi nakozemo nabonye inyuma yaho hari ikintu cyahindutse kandi kigaragara ariko rero ntabwo birahaza kugira ngo bumve yuko niba hari iyo mibanire iri hagati y'ibihugu byigenga ari ibihugu bigomba kugira ngo umubano aho ngaho niho harimo ikibazo kuri uko bikomeza nako bigenda defiance yiyongera ugasanga haza za generalisation ziva mu abantu baranga abantu barasuzugura ibyo bintu ni ukuvuga ko imibanire y'igihugu hari minimum igomba kubaho uko inzego zagenewe ziri guhuriza kubwiriza kugira ngo abantu bumve yuko imiganire n'imikoranire ifite ishingiro ifite abenere niba ari ifasha yo kukubiga batuka gufata nkariyo ntabwo ari by'icyo gihe dignité y'abantu niyo abantu bagomba kureba kandi kubahiriza kuko nibyo umuntu niba ataniye na n'amasosiyete namwe twagombye kuzabirenga abanyarwanda barabivuga n'ibyo ariko ni ukuvuga yuko bivugwa n'umuntu udafite perspective uko ejo hazamera gute ibyanjye reka bikaci ibyanjye reka mbifate ariko nonore ibyo niba uyu mugani icyo watubwira ni ukutubwira ngo tubone imenye igire shakisha uburyo kuko gutungurwa abatarabibona ntibagenda bashobora kuvuga ko batungurwa ariko tuzi ko izo système ziba ariko nk'uko predictability effectiveness ya yedi yagiye uko yagiye yihinduka muri imyaka 50 uko yarahindutse completely uko muri za 60 batanga imfashanyo na za 70 byagiye bihinduka kugeza muri za 70 muri za 60 byari za infrastructure niwo wumvaga abantu bagukorera umuhanda uyu n'uyu baraje mumfashanyo baravuga ati tugiye kubakira iyi bitaro uko bigeze kubivuga muri za secteur productive ugasanga baraje bati tugiye kubaka barrage y'urutoni y'amazi kugira ngo muzakore irrigation y'amazi ikaba ari za infrastructure zimara igihe zizatuma kuko abantu binjira muri secteur productive uko byagiye bigenda bihinduka bigiye noneho bapasa bajya muri société civile bigiye bajya muri za secteur social ibyo rero uko byagiye bihinduka abantu harimo bagomba kubyiga bakanamenya n'impamvu bigenda bihinduka kuko gutungurwa kandi tuzi ko bisanzwe bibaho ntabwo biracika umuntu wese agomba guhora yiteguye hanyuma watanze igitekerezo y'uko gukoresha amafaranga interne muri bije biba bigaragara amafaranga azava mu misoro y'igihugu harava muri za misoro harava muri za tax imibare irazwi kandi barateganyijwe kandi rimwe na rimwe usanga uko ukurikije n'uko wabyumvise nk'amafaranga avaga muri za tax uyu mwaka hari paraporo previ gukurikiza politiki zari zakozwe habaye depasi uvuga rero yuko ntabwo nawe kuvuga ngo ugire porogaramu ebyiri uzakoresha ariya n'indi uzakoresha ariya icyo gihe hari ikintu cyaba gitakaye tugishingiye kuki haba haje defiance kwemera yuko iyo wafashe ikaramu yawe ugasinya ni ukuvuga yuko uba wemeye uzasubira ku ijambo wakoze iyo bisubiyeho hari ikintu utakaje ni ukuvuga ko mu mibanire y'umuntu wayo utuvuze ikaramu isinya n'isinyura izo ngizo ndakeka yuko mu materme y'amakontara ntabwo ariko bigombye kugenda no muri za convention icyo umuntu yemeye.
However, I just want to just make a few comments. One is about the delegate from the Netherlands embassy. Actually mentioned about the debates on whether the targets or the principles are being realized, the principles that people or the partners commit to from Busan, from Paris to Busan. And actually the debates should, it's our belief and it's our ambition as a society organization that we have this dialogue. The dialogue is actually intended to bring together the development partners and the government as this is the ground for the civil society as independent actors in their own rights, so that we can have ground and then to see how we can discuss on issues, challenges on development effectiveness. And so it's my, I would call out, request the Netherlands delegate from the Netherlands embassy to help us in convincing his colleagues from the donor community to be able to raise kind of participate in our dialogue like this one. This is just the beginning, and we hope that the next one that we will have, they will always be able to come and attend, so that they could always hear from the issues that we are raising around development effectiveness. And maybe, why not, even this dialogue, this kind of dialogue will always help us to even dialogue about even issues like the one we said about the allegations. So if we have all actors in the room, then we can choose out all these issues and bring them on the table and come up with a concrete way forward. I think as when we say that civil society need enabling environment, need capacity building, and so this is actually part of the issue, the initiative that we're trying to bring forward at civil society. We're setting up our own ground, and we want now to be able to engage, and it's part of creating an enabling environment. So actually, when we come out and do something like this, we just request that stakeholders could always support us in this endeavor. I just now want to go directly to the question that was asked from by the person from the National University. Say that we should always be
to assist me in scrolling it down. So, communicate for the public policy dialogue on development effectiveness organized by the Rwanda Civil Society Platform on Development Effectiveness. At the invitation of the Civil Society Platform, a public policy dialogue on development effectiveness. At the invitation of the Rwanda Civil Society Platform, a public policy dialogue on development effectiveness was for the first time held on the 31st of August 2012 in Kigali, Rwanda, to bring together the government of Rwanda, the Rwandan Parliament, the donor community, the media, and the civil society. Organized as a follow-up to the Busan high-level meeting on development effectiveness and its outcomes, the dialogue was prepared in two phases, namely, a two-day civil society workshop on development effectiveness and the public policy dialogue on development effectiveness event held on the third and final day. Mr. Musi Ronald, in his capacity as the Director General in charge of resource mobilization in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, Honorable Musi Juvenal, in his capacity as head of the Parliamentary Account Committee, representing the Rwandan Parliament, Mr. Len Meyers as the chair of the Ningo Forum of representing the International Government Organization, as Munyamaiza Edouard, spokesperson of the Rwanda Civil Society and host of the public dialogue, led the debate session. The dialogue was organized under the theme Almost a Year After Busan, Progress in Walking the Talk. Having recognized that the dialogue on development effectiveness comes at a critical point when, yet again, we are experiencing development effectiveness challenges. The recent decisions by donors to cut, suspend, and delay aid, following allegations of the support by the Rwandan government to an armed group in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, has served as a case in point on aid and predictability. The civil society sought to organize the public policy dialogue on development effectiveness in its capacity as a key partner to development. The public policy dialogue was held in a conducive atmosphere and brought out key recommendations. Guided by the Busan Partnership for Effectiveness Development Cooperation, in its paragraph 9 that emphasizes on the supporting poverty reduction, social protection, sustainable, guided by the Busan Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, in its paragraph 9, that emphasizes on the supporting poverty reduction, social protection, sustainable economic growth and development, as well as paragraph 24, which emphasizes making development cooperation more predictable in nature, reaffirming the civil society's commitment to paragraph 22 of the same outcomes to promote human rights-based approach to aid effectiveness, further convinced that aid is not delivered for the welfare of the government as such, but for development effectiveness, and is meant to fulfill the rights and needs of the people and address poverty, inequality, and marginalization. The participants do hereby agree on the following. Government should commit to take speedy measures to ensure that the weight of aid unavailability is absorbed by the financially strong to prevent any suffering for the poor. Providing favorable environment for civil society's engagement in development effectiveness. Ensure measures to mitigate aid unpredictability. Ensure transparency in debt and aid contraction process. Maintain transparent engagement with development actors. Recognize the rightful role of the civil society in participating in policy processes. Timely engage civil society to policy processes, including planning, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. The Rwandan Parliament commits to enhance engagement with sister parliaments from developed countries to explain country realities and protect national interests. Enact legislation that protects the most vulnerable from being affected more than necessary by aid and predictability. Enact legislation that enhances transparent and proper public expenditure. The civil society commits to uphold transparency in its practices, transparent practices in implementing aid. Continue to build the capacity for citizens' engagement towards holding its leadership to account. Be more proactive in engaging meaningfully governments and donors on aid effectiveness commitments. Enhance coordination to harness its efforts in delivering development programs. Uphold the Busan Gender Equality Development Principles in implementing aid. Donors commit to engage with the government, parliaments, and citizens to prevent aid ineffectiveness consequences in developing countries' citizens. Support civil societies to deliver effectively on its mandate. Statement of commitment. We participants gathered here at the Serena Hotel on the 31st August 2012 do hereby commit to continue sharing information, upholding agreements on aid that promotes better development effectiveness and mitigates suffering for the Rwandan vulnerable people. Done at Kigali on the 31st of August 2012.
The headings for each commitment or should be changed, because I think we should say the Parliament commits to, because my understanding is that it was mainly the civil society here exchanging on what we want the Parliament to do, on what we want the government to do, and what we want the donors to do in this spirit. So I think we can say this, we civil society commits to, and we can discuss on that and agree on that. But when it comes to the parliament and the government, I think we should say we recommend to the government, or we recommend the parliament and the donors, because I think as we've seen, representation was not huge, and also the people who could commit themselves, most of them were not here. If the Minister of Minecofin were here, I think when we say the government commits and agrees to that, that would be good. But given the fact that he could not make it to this meeting because of the cabinet meeting he mentioned, then we should see how we change the language. It's just a proposal for your determination. Thank you. The invaluable ideas you have been providing since morning, and also the contributions you made from the day one on Wednesday when we met at Novotel, and also for sacrificing your time to be here the entire day. We know that this is really something very important, and that we have been asked for many times to engage in and to do. But as we discussed today, I think we heard that our contribution, our engagement still needs to be improved. And we really we are looking forward to seeing many other civil society organizations taking part in this joint venture. As I said earlier, we are putting in place thematic groups that will not only tackle issues of aid effectiveness, but also other issues of public interest, of any common interest as well. Because there are many issues that we are involved in, and that are also responding to the needs of the population we serve. So again, as I said, I would like to encourage everybody to work hard to engage other partners, other actors in this work that you want to do with the government and the development partners. Also, it was made clear that there are also issues of capacities that we need to work out, that we need to resolve on our side, so that our contribution is again made effective in this venture. So I would like to thank you so much for making it to this meeting, for the invaluable contributions you've made, and also the commitments and the ideas that we continue to provide in the journey of making aid and development more effective and serving the interests of the people in Rwanda. Also, I would like to, as we have been discussing since morning, I think most of the ideas are coming from this report that was produced by IPA. I think all of you know IPA. It's a knowledgeable institution that has a reputation of conducting quality work, and I think, as you have seen, and also the outcomes are really worth reading and also disseminating, not only now, but also in future endeavors that we'll be involved in. So I take this opportunity to officially launch and recommend using this report for the work we will be doing in engaging civil society organizations and also working in partnership with the government and other actors in aid and development effectiveness. Without taking much of your time, I would like to thank you once again, thank the partners who have contributed to this event, and also thank each and everyone for the time you made for this event. And at this juncture, I would like to invite Honorable Juvenal to officially close this meeting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. This evening, my idea is very simple. I've asked to close the meeting, but before pronouncing the thought, I would like to thank the platform de la Société Civile Rwandaise to have organized this public policy dialogue on aid effectiveness and to have had a two-day meeting on the capacity building for the civil society on this day. We come to adopt a communiqué where we take commitment for ourselves, and when we have made the recommendation to government, to parliament, and to the development partners. I'm sure that from the discussion we had this morning and this afternoon, I'm sure that your engagement guarantee that we work hard to make this recommendation be implemented. My wish is that in our country we have a vibrant, dynamic, and vocal civil society who will advocate for new relations between the developing partners, donors, and the recipients in the interest of our peoples, for the development of our countries. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to have participated in this meeting. Thanks for your contribution. As we say that you are here to organize, to make a follow-up. What has been discussed here, I think in the next times, this time, we'll see how the result will have been good. Thank you very much. And as you asked me, I declare closed this meeting. Thank you.